We're going to jump right into it.
Absolutely.
Touring the state, these Lincoln Day dinners, what is your message to Ohio voters?
My message to Ohio voters is that if you care about economic excellence and educational excellence in the state, I don't care about your political party. I don't care about whether you live in an urban community or a rural one. We're on the same team. I don't just want to lead Ohio to be one of the better states in the Midwest. I want to lead Ohio to be the top state in the country. I mean that literally. When it comes to raising a family, growing a business, generating wealth, raising our kids with civic pride. I think we've lost our civic self-confidence in our young people. That's where I'm leading our state. Ohio was the state of excellence in America. We led the first industrial revolution. And on my watch, we're going to lead the second one. If it was Silicon Valley for the last 10 years, it's going to be the Ohio River Valley for the next 10 years. And I want to do it in a united way that brings Republicans, Democrats, independents, people across the political spectrum together to bring more people, more wealth, more prosperity, and a higher quality education to the kids in this state. That's why I'm in this.
One of the things that's getting a lot of buzz is your position on getting rid of income tax in Ohio.
Yes.
How would you replace the revenue from that?
So look, first of all, why get rid of the income tax in Ohio? Here's why. We need to attract more people to our state. And Megan, here's something not a lot of people know. Our state's population is shrinking. That's creating all kinds of challenges for us. Workforce challenges, economic challenges. And where are they going? They're going to zero tax states. Younger college-educated people tend to leave. The people coming into our state tend to be older and on government aid. So that doesn't work demographically for our state in the long run. So a lot of what you're going to hear from me in this campaign, and a lot of what I'm going to do as governor, is designed to stop that population shrinkage problem and really drive a boom of other Americans moving from other states to our state instead of Texas or Florida or Tennessee. Zero income tax is an important part of that. Texas, Florida, Tennessee, what do they have in common? They're all zero income tax states. How are we going to get there? It's going to be through a combination of economic growth. As more people come here, that's more revenue that flows through the existing sales taxes. It's also other sources of revenue that we're going to open up. And we're going to look at improving the effectiveness of some of how our state's money is spent. Not in a way that leaves anyone else wanting for something that they miss, but just bringing greater effectiveness to the way we think we run the state. The combination of those will get to zero income tax and attract more people to our state.
Hamilton County and the Bengals today put in a request for the state of Ohio to give them $350 million. What would you do if you were governor?
Well, look, a lot of these stadium-specific questions, you got the Browns question, now you got the Bengals one popping up. Those specific questions are going to be resolved by the time I'm governor. But I'll give you the general principle, because this stadium question is going to come up, I'm sure, in a different form when I'm governor anyway. Here's how I look at it, all right? The Bengals, they're really important to Cincinnati. The Browns, they're really important to Cleveland. They're part of the culture and identity of each of these cities. And that's great. I'm a Bengals fan. I grew up in Cincinnati. I still don't think the state should be in the business of giving away free money. What I do think the state should be doing, and the leaders of the state should be doing, is looking at how the state can make money out of these opportunities to help put more money in the pockets of Ohioans through a zero income tax, through putting a cap on property taxes. That's where I think the state needs to be focused. And so my own background is I am a businessman, and I do think that if we have somebody who approaches the leadership of this state with the mentality of doing better business deals, getting a better deal for our state in win-wins across the board, that's the way I'd actually be leading. Probably a little bit different than the way things have been done in the past, but I'm not here to criticize those who came before me. I'm here to lay out how we're going to do it in the future. And really putting money in the pockets of Ohioans, that's what I care about, rather than giving away free money.
I want to talk about one of your top opponents, Dave Yost, at this point. We interviewed him a couple weeks ago, and when we asked him about you, he said, quote, "I've done the granular work. I'm not reading about it or making it up or needing to be trained on the job. I've been there." What is your take on his comments about you?
Here's my message to Dave and to everybody else, in this race is I'm going to root for whatever he wishes to do next in his career. I'm rooting for his success. I've tried to be helpful to him at other points in his career in the past, and I'm going to be as helpful as I can in whatever's next for Dave. I'm wishing him well. He's served this state, and I'm not going to have a negative thing to say about him. What I will say is that we have never seen this kind of unity in a Republican Party primary before. This is unprecedented. All the way from President Trump to majorities of both chambers of the Ohio legislature, to every statewide elected official who has endorsed in this race, to every member of Ohio's congressional delegation who has endorsed in this race, to every U.S. senator who's endorsed in this race. 100% of those endorsements are behind me. The polling, the fundraising, we've never seen this type of enthusiasm. Even where we're sitting tonight, I'm told that it's over 2x the record crowd they've ever had here in Warren County. And I'm seeing that everywhere we're going across our state. That enthusiasm is something that I want to use to not just unite our Republican Party, but to unite this whole state and to lead our state back to greatness. This is a state that doesn't have to be just one of the states of the Midwest or the so-called Rust Belt. We're out with the Rust Belt, in with the Platinum Belt on my watch. And I do think it's going to take an outsider from the next generation with fresh legs to lead us there. And I think it's a big part of why we're seeing that unprecedented enthusiasm. So you're not going to hear me say a negative word, a negative peep about any of the other Republicans in Ohio or those who preceded me. I wish them well. I wish them well in whatever's next for their step in their career journey. But I'm here to lead Ohio back to our future of greatness. And I'm confident we're going to achieve heights that this state has not seen in its history.
And you could be doing anything. I mean,
Yeah.
You obviously are super successful. Why be governor?
We gave this a lot of thought. And the reason I was called into this, Megan, is that, first of all, I wasn't thinking about it when people across this state came to our home in Columbus, courted me into this. I kept an open mind. But one of the things that really became clear to me is that, first of all, many of the issues that I thought deeply about during my campaign for U.S. president, take education policy. One of the things I talked about most was the educational achievement crisis in our youth. That's actually best addressed by a governor, not even by a congressman or a senator or a U.S. president, because those issues belong to the states and to the people. In a more deep sense of the why, right? I mean, we all have to look ourselves in the mirror and ask ourselves, how are we spending the short time that we're given on this earth? We each have a finite time here. To me, I'm guided by gratitude. My parents came here, not far from where we are, to Cincinnati, Ohio, 45 years ago with no money. And in a single generation, I've gone on to found multi-billion-dollar companies. I married my wife, Apurva, who's a successful throat surgeon at the James Hospital in Columbus. Her parents came here with nothing. She's lived the American dream. We are in this because we care about passing that American dream on to our kids and to their generation, to every other son and daughter of Ohio, too. I'm filled with gratitude. And I think this is our phase of our life to give back and pay forward what this country and this state has given to us. And so after, my success in business, after we're looking at what's next, after we had kids, something about that really opens your heart and your mind. I'm raising my two boys. One is 5 and the other is 2 in Columbus. Apurva and I had to think deeply about why we're doing what we're doing. She's already the public servant and the hero of the family as a surgeon. For me, the question was, how are we going to have the biggest possible impact that we can on our state and on our country? And to me, there was no doubt that if we could revive Ohio's economy, if we could attract people into our state, and if we could set a national model for what educational achievement looks like, including in public schools in this state, there was no higher calling for me. And that's why I entered this with conviction.
You are a product of public school. I feel like
Yes.
we talk a lot, or I've heard a lot about you being a graduate of St. X, which is
Right.
amazing. But how did your public school education prepare you for who you are today?
It was instrumental in shaping me. I mean, every one of the experiences I had a great experience at St. X High School, which you're right, is maybe better known in my background. What many people may not know is I went to Princeton Public Schools from 1st through 8th grade and Lakota for kindergarten before that. And I went to Evendale Elementary, then I went to Rellis, Robert E. Lucas Intermediate School. It's now closed, but for 6th grade, very different school environment than Evendale. And then Princeton Junior High School, which has kids from a lot of different backgrounds under the same roof. And it really gave me, I would say, a lot of experiences that prepared me for St. X. Because at St. X, it was different. We grew in a middle-class household. There were wealthier kids. I was the lone Hindu student at a Catholic high school. At Princeton, it was a little bit different because you had other students like me who came from stable family backgrounds. You had a lot of other students who came from single-parent households, tougher family backgrounds than I had. And the thing that I often share now is that while we didn't grow up in great economic privilege, we were solidly middle class in Westchester and Evendale, I did have the ultimate privilege of having 2 parents in the house, instilling in us a focus on education and a belief in God. And along with my parents, I had several teachers along the way who really touched my life and changed the course of my life for the better. I remember Mrs. Hendel in first grade at Evendale, Mrs. Stallworth in second grade. When I went to Rellis in sixth grade, there was a teacher by the name of Mrs. Kinney. She saw potential in me. Michelle, it was a magnet program they had in Evendale, in Rellis. She saw potential in me that I didn't know I had. And she actually lit a fire under my feet. She talked to my parents. She would encourage me to work harder. She changed my life. And if it wasn't for Mrs. Kinney, I doubt I would have lived the American dream at the scale that I have. She passed away tragically a couple of years ago in an accident, or else I'm sure she'd be here with us, and I'd love to be honoring her, at these events we're having today. But I think we need more teachers like Mrs. Kinney in our public schools. I want to attract the very best to the teaching profession to make sure that we're addressing that achievement deficit in the next generation of kids who might need a Mrs. Kinney to light a fire under their feet too. And I'll take that Princeton public school education every day when I reflect on what changed my life. It was many of those teachers in those first 8 years.
And that merit-based pay is something that you are proposing as if you become governor, correct?
Well, there's a deeper issue that I'm looking to address as governor, which is I'm confronting the question of whether a public school teacher with a starting salary of about $40,000 a year can actually live the American dream today. And I think the answer to that question is no. I don't think you can live the American dream with kids as the principal breadwinner in a house on a salary of $40,000 a year. And that means that many of the brightest young minds who want to go into the teaching profession aren't actually doing it. That's a travesty, especially at a time in our history where I'll give you some of the facts. 75% of eighth graders in our country right now are not proficient in math. Think about that. Kids in China are on average a full 4 years ahead of the average student here. A seventh grader here is performing at the equivalent level of a third grade student in China. That's unacceptable to me. And I just refuse to stand by and watch and say we're just going to copy the status quo and hope it gets better. No, hope alone is not a strategy. We're going to have to make changes in the direction of actually improving those outcomes for our students. So I look at the data. I'm a biotech guy by background. I studied molecular biology in undergrad. I'm always data-driven. Let's approach this the same way. Let's follow the data. What is the most important factor affecting a child's performance? Number one is the family, but number two, the top factor outside the family is the quality of his teachers. That shouldn't be surprising to anybody. And yet the majority of our dollars right now go not towards classroom instruction, but everything other than classroom instruction. So that's going to change on my watch. I want the best public school teachers to be paid a lot more than they are right now so that we continue to attract the best to the profession. But it's got to be tied to some basis of performance, right? It can't just be a culture of mediocrity where everybody is flatly imposed to be the same. Doesn't mean you're going to be just teaching to the test. Peer assessments in the schools. Teachers know who's most collaborative, who's actually carrying their weight. Parental assessments. Improvements from the start of the school year to the end of the school year within a classroom. Not apples and oranges comparison between poorer school districts and wealthier ones. So that's the way I think about this, is I'm on a mission to make sure that every kid in Ohio gets a world-class education in math, reading, writing, financial literacy, civic education, physical education, which we're going to start in kindergarten, get the cell phones out of the schools, bring back civic education that teaches our kids to be proud of our country and our state rather than to be ashamed of it. Say the Pledge of Allegiance every morning with a moment of silence, address that mental health epidemic that so early on is often identified in our schools, but we do nothing about it. That's what I want to do for our state and the young people in our state. And frankly, that's not a particularly, I don't think it is, a particularly Republican or Democrat message. If you care about your kids having that same shot at the American dream that I did and you want to give them that world-class education, trust me, we're on the same team. And even if we disagree on some other things, I'm going to work with you, with a seat at the table in our movement to lead our state to the next level. And I do think right now more than ever that is going to take a different kind of leader from a new generation. It's a big part of why I'm in this.
I got the 2 minutes, so I know that. I'm sure you've watched your own valedictorian speech, right?
I have watched it a while ago from St. X. Okay.
Yeah, so when I took, first of all, my parents are very excited that I'm doing this interview.
Oh, nice.
And my mom was like, did you watch his commencement speech when he was valedictorian 18? I go, no, I didn't. But I did last night, so I want to play this little bit that I queued up. Hold on.
In a way, to give and not to count the cost. It isn't about reaching the destination, It's all about making the journey to get there. And in the end, we might find ourselves at a destination far from the one we have in mind tonight. And so tonight, we find that this graduation, this
I love that line about how you have maybe become someone who you didn't think that you could be at 18 years old.
Yeah, and I think it's many of those teachers and many of the people who we worked with along the way that give you that self-confidence, right? And I think that that's what I want so many of our young people to have. Over the course of my education, I probably gained a self-confidence by the time I graduated from 12th grade at St. X High School than I might have had or didn't have at the time I started 6th grade at Rellis in the Princeton School District. And I just want this to be the state where every one of our kids views the American dream, success, a world-class education as their birthright in Ohio. That's our tradition, right? Neil Armstrong was born and raised in the state. He was an Ohioan when he went to the outer frontiers of outer space to become the first man to walk on the moon. Think about the confidence that takes. I grew up in this state, born and raised in Cincinnati, Ohio, went on to found successful companies, to become the youngest person in U.S. history to ever run for U.S. president as a Republican. Unthinkable at the time that I was growing up here. I want every kid in this state to have the gumption, the ambition, and also the humility, because I think that's a good quality of Ohio, is our ambition combined with our humility to achieve greatness while remaining grounded and true to our roots and who we really are. And that's what I think makes us different than even the Texas or Florida or New York or California. We're going to make this state great not by copying somewhere else. We're going to make this state great by being the best version of ourselves. I was born and raised here. I'm grateful to the state. We're raising our boys here for a reason. And that's my skin in the game, by the way. My older son, he's going to be in high school by the time I'm done with 2 terms as governor. It will be the gratifying honor of my life to see my 2 boys grow up into the state that we helped reshape for the better. That'll be the honor of my life. I'm looking forward to serving as the governor of this state. And to everybody here in Greater Cincinnati, but across the state, we want to work with you. We want to listen to you to take our state to the next level, especially Democrats who might think that, we're living in a partisan world. Put that to one side. That's yesterday's politics, all right? In tomorrow's politics and the way we're going to do it in Ohio, we're one team. Let's get this done. And I'm confident that our best days are going to be ahead of us.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.